Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Peter Lewis, founding member of the legendary Moby Grape, has released Imagination, a new collection of singular songcraft that could only spring from the creative consciousness of Peter Lewis. With his voice and fine fettle through lyrical themes and ponder mortality versus eternity, illusion versus reality. The 10-track long player is his second release on OMAD Records, a follow-up to 2019's The Road to Zion, and it marks a deeper collaboration with John DeNicola, main man of the Bespoke label. The song on Imagination, like those on The Road to Zion, attempt to reveal a certain perspective about life, Lewis says. But on The Road to Zion, this perspective was highly personal, whereas working with John on Imagination, we sought a perspective we might share with everyone. Please welcome singer, songwriter, musician, best known as a founding member of 60s rock legends Moby Grape, Peter Lewis, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Peter.
Hello, man.
I got a couple of quotes that you said in a couple of other interviews. One is, I have always felt so lucky to have been a small part of what seems to be what disappearing before my eyes. And that is true. The rock scene, as we know it, is slowly disappearing. And one gentleman in particular hit you hard was David Perry Lindley, who I did not know was your cousin.
Right. Yeah. No, he was. Yeah, yeah. David, can I, my mom's brother's son, who was adopted to the Lindleys when they were very young. My grandmother and her kids were poor, and they lived in L.A. next to a studio where the kids would go over there when they needed extras. Jack would go over there but he was the only brother, and he would wander. They had a boarding house
Mm-hmm.
that my grandmother ran, and the kids cleaned up and made the meals for the guests and so forth. And my Uncle Jack, he'd wander around the alley and back of the boarding house, and there was a rich family that had no kids called the Lindleys that lived in there, and they kind of fell in love with them. They watched, and it was kind of like a scene from the Little Rascals, where
Mm.
this guy with curly black hair, they had him come in and have lunch, and they finally adopted him. My grandmother adopted Jack to the Lindleys because could ensure his future, and they were very poor. Before my mom got in the movies and became a movie star,
Mm-hmm.
but so anyway, my uncle went in the Second World War. He commanded a minesweeper in the Pacific, and he married the admiral's daughter. When he got out of there, he was an attorney. He went to law school and before the Second World War. And anyway, they lived in Pasadena, and they would come over the hill. We'd see them all the time. And David was my age, so and I was in a band in high school, and playing a guitar in a band. And David, I took him to a band practice one time, and I don't think he'd played before that. And he watched it and kind of looked at it and he didn't say much. And that was at Thanksgiving. And then there was we had these big parties at Thanksgiving and Christmas. The Lindleys would come over there, and the sisters who had married well, and my mom, they had all this money,
Mm-hmm.
and so there were these parties, and the Lindleys were not rich. The Uncle Jack worked as an insurance company attorney, and every day in downtown LA, made the trip to Pasadena. He had a house in San Marino, which is nice, but it couldn't compare to the wealth he had on the other side of the hill. The women, the sisters, his sisters. But the Lindleys, like David was my age, and he just somehow he came over with Thanksgiving. I took him to a band practice I had, and then at Christmas they came back for another party. And my uncle, or our uncle, who was Ricardo Montalban, and
Really?
oh yeah, and was learning how to
Cordoba.
the Cordova, the Fantasy Island and all of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And so anyway, he was learning how to play the flamenco guitar because it was very popular. Carlos Montoya was
Hmm.
very popular at the time, and he was learning it because he was a Spanish guy, a Mexican guy, Latino, and he was learning how to play Malagueña, which is like you play the E and then the F and then back to the E, and
Yeah.
he could do that. Right, you learn how to do that, and all the sisters, all because they're the only actors, they're very dramatic. Oh, Ricardo, that's wonderful. And our Uncle Ricardo, thank you. And then he was going to put his guitar away, and before he did, David asked me, he said, Uncle Ricardo, can I play that guitar and see it before you put it away? And he said, of course, my boy. And he hands David his guitar, and I guess everybody got involved in doing talking to each other and so forth. And I wasn't paying much attention, and all of a sudden I thought I was hearing Segovia or something on the like somebody put a record on the, and it was like a classical guitar. And I turned around, it was David Lindley,
Oh, wow.
And then I lost track of David, after I got in Moby Grape and all that, and he was in the Kaleidoscope, but we didn't never cross paths. And later, and it's a weird story. My second wife was a friend of the Eagles, and
Hmm.
we met up in Aspen when Moby Grape was playing up there. And she was a friend of Don Henley's in particular. So we just started hanging around with Don Henley, and one thing led to another. We were going to a concert with the Eagles at the Anaheim Stadium,
Hmm.
and they were playing with Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt. And we got there, and there was this guy playing fiddle with Linda, and the long black hair playing fiddle. And I thought, man, that guy's really good. And then later he was playing slide with Jackson, and I went over to him, and I didn't know who it was, And I said, hey, man, you're great. You're a great guitar player. And he looks up, and it's David Lindley, So
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
yeah, so but he had not only mastered the classical guitar, in 1 month. I mean, this is a guy basically took a look at the fretboard, which is guitar is not easy to play in
Right.
a way, is because it's like you can play the same note in a bunch of different places. I mean,
Hmm.
that it gives you sort of a performance advantage, but it's harder to learn, like let's say, than a keyboard, which one note is right there. It's always right there.
Right.
So anyway, but he took a look at it. Oh, I got it, because the Lindleys were all like super smart. His
Hmm.
brothers, one's a microbiologist, the other has a master's in musicology and harpsichord. It's a very esoteric kind of thing, but they're like that. They have their own little thing, and they focus on it. They're very intense. The Lindleys,
Hmm.
and anyway, that was the story about David Lind. That's it. And then, of course, we kind of remained connected through the rest of our lives. And then, he passed away last year, and it was like it's
Yeah.
just left a huge vacuum, you
Yeah.
know. So anyway, um,
David created quite a resume too, man. He was in El Rayo X.
oh
He
yeah,
performed with, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, Ry Cooder, Bonnie Raitt, Curtis
oh,
Mayfield, Dolly Parton. I mean, the list goes on and on.
oh yeah, he played with Rod Stewart. He did a
Yeah.
record with Rod Stewart. Yeah. Well, everybody wanted him to be on the sessions because he's just never made a mistake.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he had a way of connecting with the art that was able, he could fit in with it. It was like he was not a show off.
Hmm.
He just was totally focused on the music. He was never on an ego trip,
Hmm.
and that's what kind of allowed him to survive the way he did. Without going nuts. The sort of the way I don't want to use Moby Grape as an example, but but there is that, when
Hmm.
when you can't keep it in perspective,
Right.
you get a little bit famous and something, and then you start believing all the press,
Yeah.
like. And I think in our case, there was a documentary that just came out on an MGM documentary about the '60s,
Hmm.
and I haven't seen it yet, but it's like I think we get a pretty good stroke in there, but the real story of it is really not so much about like our having this manager that ripped
Hmm.
us off or whatever. It's about not being able to handle fame.
Yeah.
And I would just say that um like watching my mom when I was growing up, of course, it was like watch how hard that is sometimes when you get to the point where just you can't, there's just it's like 24/7. You have to sort of try to be this person that you show everybody in the movies or whatever, however that works. And it's the same thing with musicians. For us, we're talking about that. I was talking about that to my wife the other day, and about because our first album cover, it wasn't us that did this. It was the photographer
Hmm.
that posed us in front of an antique store, and here's Skip, with an American flag, and then the drummer Don Stevenson sort of flipping off the world, and we looked like these guys, that are just we're going to kick some ass,
Right.
we were not really trying to do anything like that. We were just trying to, like play some music without having to get a day job,
Yeah.
which is what everybody in the 60s was trying to do.
Yeah.
The whole rock star thing, it's like it became, I think it was not very cool, really. I mean, to the Grateful Dead or any
Hmm.
of us, I think we just wanted to be a part of this
Sure.
social revolution. But
You
the
guys, you
business,
guys, you guys were so talented too because you had basically five songwriters in the band.
yeah, that's
So
right.
you never had a lack of material.
Well, we sort of, like I had written one song when I when I got in Moby Grape. So, like I learned my craft when we were doing it. As we were going through this, like documenting your experience of going through it. But that's what everybody in the 60s was doing. It was more like,
Right.
like not just being, I think LA, when I say the bands from LA, they were kind of not like the San Francisco bands. They were more of, trying to, it described what it was looking at, like observers. But I think the San Francisco scene was like, you're not expected to do that. You're expected to be, not describe as so. You're supposed to be a part of it. Go
Hmm.
through this with everybody else.
Right.
And so, the songs kind of sprang from just trying to document your experience as being part of this the subculture, the
Hmm.
social revolution, and
Right.
sometimes you go a little too far, you get carried
Yeah.
away with that, and with the
Yeah.
drugs and everything else, but
Well,
but that
one thing that it brought great music, the '60s, and the Vietnam War brought great music, and now
yeah,
COVID brought great music because a lot of people, opened up and there was a lot of great, music writing during the pandemic, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, I think that's right. I don't think art in general happens in a vacuum. There's
Right.
got to be some kind of something that moves the
Hmm.
artist to want to say something, and not just about themselves. I think when it gets weird is when somebody is just becoming self-absorbed. When there's something going on like the Vietnam War. That's why that music was so great, because it was like we were all trying to share some kind of perspective
Hmm.
on the thing. And like I'm not sure that it wasn't about, like I think Dylan said it best, that he didn't want to have to be the leader of any kind of parade or any. You
Right.
want to be connected to the that, but what he was seeing, was what he was seeing, and it looked like wasn't some of it wasn't very nice.
Hmm.
And so you got to say something about it. And I think that it just was the time that we were all trying to get some attention
Sure.
in the particular space and time, that created that music. And so yeah, there was a sort of consensus about the war. Nobody wanted it, and nobody wanted to go fight in it, and the civil rights issue too. I say, why not let black people have what we have?
Hmm.
Let's see what's the, the and the rebellion. I think is more about trying not to live the same kind of pedantic lives our parents we
Yeah.
watch our parents living, which they get up and go to
Right.
work every day, and they're not very happy, but they very try to do it in some kind of a sense of stoic heroism
Right.
about it. And you just look at it and you think, and on why meanwhile there's this threat of nuclear annihilation where the communists are trying to get every bit of territory that somebody is left unprotected. Nobody has the military to defend their country, and
Yeah.
here come the commies, and then we're trying to stop them, so we do the same thing.
Yeah.
So who's the bad guy here?
Right.
And I think it was very confusing, and a lot of it was just an attempt to sort of just escape, just say, I don't care what this is going to be like, it's got to be better than this, you
You
know.
know, the 60s music though, it helped a lot of soldiers, especially in the foxholes. You know,
Yeah,
I
that's
talked to a
right.
lot of soldiers from the Vietnam War, man, and they say if it wasn't for Hendrix or Grand Funk or Moby
Yeah,
Grape, I
yeah,
would have
yeah.
never made it, you know?
Well, that's right. I mean, like, that's the weird thing is that at some point, I think the establishment was trying to create some kind of conflict between us and trying to spin this thing
Hmm.
where we were against them, the soldiers. But then I looked at it from the stage. I remember looking at it from the stage at Monterey, and
Right.
and all these people were in army jackets, old army
Yep.
jackets, so they'd been discharged, and they were there trying, and their hair wasn't quite long enough to be a hippie yet, but they were going there,
Yeah.
and so that's what that was very hopeful. I mean, I felt like that was going to help. That one weekend was the high point, I think, in the whole adventure.
You guys were great at Monterey. I think you performed on Saturday, June 17th. And it was you
Yeah,
guys and Hugh Masekela, the Birds, Laura
yeah,
Nero, the Airplane, Booker T and the MGs, and Otis Redding. And Otis Redding had a monumental performance on that day.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was one of those tribal gatherings where
Yeah.
the bands, we did. You get to meet these people, like I'm meeting Hendrix,
Hmm.
like I was wandering around backstage, and kind of I never, in those days a lot of guys did not have afros,
Right.
and it was because here Otis Redding played there too, and he's like, those black people were there in sharkskin suits and their hair was short, and they kind of they weren't they didn't look like they were part of what was going on with us, with the whiteys.
Hmm.
And so I was looking in this room, and there was this guy with this afro playing a guitar, just warming up. It was right before his set, and I was just looking at him, and I was kind of staring at him. He looked at me. He says, and I don't want to say anything nasty. I mean, say the bad word. I say, but what the bleep are you looking at? And I said, oh, nothing, nothing. You know. And then that stage manager came in and said, it's time for your set. So he gets up and he goes out there. Nobody had ever seen him before,
Right.
and I just standing in the wings and watching him, and it was like just and the audience, watching the audience too, because they weren't necessarily going, yeah, like they would later. They were kind of stunned,
Yeah, they
like
were freaked out.
yeah, and like and then he comes off stage, and I'm standing there, and he kind of bumps me in the shoulder. He said, are we cool? I said, yeah, yeah, and so that's how I met him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk about Imagination, which I love. That was a great album.
Oh, thank
Um,
you, man.
you say my songs have all been inspired by personal experience. Um, you said, although there was no preconceived concept that inspired the new CD, I will say that what guided me through the making of it was a growing sense of my own mortality, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to mention some of the tracks. Just Like Sunshine was the intro, very 60s sounding, a little bit psychedelic. I loved it. Um, Frank Zappa's Ghost. Talk about this track.
Well, it's I had a lot of the stuff I write comes from I get in a dream state,
Right.
and like some of it, it's like I had this dream about there was a place in LA called Cantor's. It was a delicatessen on Fairfax in Hollywood,
Uh-huh.
and older musicians, when they get done playing, would go hang out at Cantor's, and Frank Zappa was always there, and he was always
Hmm.
like sitting in a booth, and he'd have, these cats around him, and he was very strange looking at the time, and and like, but he was the kind of the guy that was the master of ceremonies at Cantor's, like because he's a great musician, and he was the mothers of invention. Of course, they were playing at the Whiskey at the time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this dream about going in there, and him beckoning me over. And then as I was walking over there, I just heard this, like the hook to that song, which is like Frank Zappa's Ghost, like it with,
Mm-hmm.
and the chords underneath it, just that. And so I got up and I came in here where I am now, got on my machine and stuck that on there so I wouldn't forget it. And then later just kind of put all the rest of it in there, which is the middle part. I think is I used the kind of the music from the Rite of Spring, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of so antithetical to what kind of thing he would do, and yet it's so weird. It doesn't belong there in a way, but the idea of being able to do tempo changes and
Yep.
put in a thing like that kind of takes you on this trip where it's not a Frank Zappa sounding song, but in the end he might dig something like that,
Mm-hmm.
so I just wanted
Sure.
his ghost to kind of dig the tune.
Yeah, he's out there somewhere.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I can say that for sure. I think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Some
think
of the
I think all of I was just going to add, you were talking about mortality and all
uh-huh.
that, and I just say that that because a lot of people are passing away here, that are
Yeah.
from that world, and you said that's what kind of got me to but actually it was my sister and brother who both passed away when they were 76. So when I was 76,
Mm-hmm.
I started to think, okay, well, that's it for me too,
Oh gosh.
and I made it to 77. I went, wow, I'm going to make a record. And so I started doing this record,
Yeah.
and so the songs kind of sprang from that. But I
Right.
just I guess I got lost in what I was trying to say here about it. But it started me thinking about how mortality works, and I ended up it started coming to the conclusion that we're really not in a human race. It's like a human relay race where
Right.
somebody might die,
Mm-hmm.
but the spiritual energy that they created doesn't doesn't die with them,
Exactly.
and somehow how that works is it works because we don't forget them. In other words, because you don't forget somebody when they die, they they don't really in some metaphysical way, and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard. You can't prove this, but everything there are people who are starting to think this way too. That
Mm-hmm.
especially the quantum physicists that are
Sure.
talking about how if you're not aware of it, it isn't there. In other words, they do these weird experiments where they can prove that light is a wave until you
Mm-hmm.
start measuring it or looking at it, and then it becomes a particle.
Yep.
So it's both,
Yeah.
and how all this. So where does this energy, spiritual energy that people create with their lives, go when their bodies pass away? Well, it's sort of up here.
Mm-hmm.
The memory of them
Mm-hmm.
doesn't disappear. So they're not, in a sense. What are we anyway? If these quantum physicists are right, I mean, it's basically we're here because we think we're here,
Yeah.
because we're aware of ourselves, we're aware
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
all this, and so that was very hopeful
Mm-hmm.
to me in a way,
Sure.
there's nothing but so death isn't really something to be afraid of, like we all try to scare each other about that, to control each other's behavior,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever we do, the religions and some, the government, and so you're not scared to die. How about dying and going to hell forever? You like that? So you know it's easier than hiring a bunch of policemen to control everybody, so they
Exactly.
logically they work on you. And I don't think people are totally aware of this,
Right.
but I think they're becoming sort of more aware of it. And
I
to
think
me, that
so.
and I think
Yeah.
it's so I think that's hopeful, man.
George Harrison had a good attitude about death. He wasn't afraid of it at all. You
Yeah.
know, he would have rather died than be alive. I think is the way he kind of put it. You
Yeah,
know,
well, yeah, well, that's people, but they're that it's kind of you tell people that and it scares them,
right,
that.
right.
But I mean, George Harrison, like everybody sort of was in the '60s, was sort of
Hmm.
looking for some personal freedom. Well,
Sure.
you don't really get that in this world because uh, you're constantly dealing with people's people's awareness of you.
Hmm.
And I say this all kind of ties in with this quantum
Hmm.
vision
Hmm.
of the way things work. But awareness is what creates reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not totally aware of, if you're not aware of it, it doesn't. They say it does not exist,
Right.
and you can't. Like again, if somebody is an objective realist, you can't if they can't taste it and touch it, it doesn't. It's not
Right.
there to most people, and this
Sure.
is what we've been sold. Science is, but now science is kind of leading us to a point
Hmm.
where that isn't true anymore.
Hmm.
So there's this thing that the unknown, and I think your freedom has to do with being able to uh, take this quantum leap into the unknown
Hmm.
with sort of with the sense of uh, freedom, from whatever this other thing has been. I think George Harrison, being as famous as he
Hmm.
was, probably had that vision. I mean,
Yeah.
because yeah,
I
so
think you're right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So some of
man.
the other great songs on this album I want to mention: "Imagination," loved "Imagination." One of my favorites as well was "Path of Least Resistance," which was inspired, I guess, by the management issues of the band.
Yeah, well, it's I guess in retrospect, like you were asking where these songs come from. Well, the subconscious,
Right.
and that. So John DeNicola actually did the track back there, that one,
Hmm.
and he sent it to me, and he sends me these things that are kind of like just ideas, just a lick. And then it kind of wanders and meanders or whatever it does, just whatever it feels like doing. Then it's up to me to take that and make it into a song,
Hmm.
arrange those parts into different A, B, C sections and so forth, which I did. And then, when I started on the words, there was something something going on in my life that, where I had seen this guy, there was a club I go play at over there called Lost Chord that's owned by Chris Polonis. Chris is like,
Hmm.
among other things, he's Jeff Bridges' guitar player when Jeff goes to play. He's a great musician, but he's also
Hmm.
a world-class sound engineer. So he built this place where it just, when you play there, you sound great.
Right.
And we play over there. My daughter and I play there sometimes. And there was like one night they had this a big a girl he was promoting was singing, and people go there and they sometimes they get really drink too much wine or whatever. And there's one guy in there, and he was really drunk, and he was wandering around trying to sell a guitar he had, and he didn't look like he looked like he was kind of on the skids or something. And
Hmm.
I went outside, and he came. I kind of stumbled out of the club and came out to me and was talking to me, and he was trying to sell me this guitar. And he was playing, and I could tell he had been a good musician at one point, but he just sort of uh, like falling off the grid. And he was just, and I just was listening to him. He was kind of trying to get me to try to get somebody to understand, or he really was a little too drunken. So, but I was still listening to him, and he left, and somehow I had this idea that being on this path of least resistance. How did you how'd you get there
Hmm.
to this point where you should have been up on that stage earning your keep,
Right.
just doing what you do good. And
Right.
so that started, and then sort of as I got through it, or going through the rest of it, when I look back at it, yeah, totally, it was like coming from it. You know how you cross connect stuff in
Hmm.
life,
Hmm.
where it's like it's like you track it down to you track these ideas down to the source. And when I got to at that point was this experience we had with our old manager, who appeared to be like, quote, an angel when we first met him, and then it was actually the devil in disguise, which can happen. And so, that's where the idea for that thing came
Huh.
from.
It's
Yeah.
a shame how so many managers turned into devils. you know?
Well, it's like it's that they're not performers, and I think
Yeah.
the job of one of those guys, the best ones, they don't envy, they don't want to get in the limelight themselves. They're
Right.
trying to help, and the Doobie Brothers, who I know,
Hmm.
and their manager, this guy Bruce Cohen, was not like
Right.
that. I think they finally went with Irving Azoff instead. And now you're talking about a guy that like really kind of a ruthless businessman, but like now Irving Azoff, he's got the Eagles,
Hmm.
the Doobie Brothers, and Steely Dan. There's sort of the three remaining bands from that era that
Yeah.
still go out and play and make money. But so he might be a nice guy, but I heard Don Henley say, he's the devil, he's our devil.
Hmm.
So he's not gonna, try to rip the Eagles off. It's like killing the goose that laid the gold egg. He knows enough not to do that. I think
Right.
Matthew, not all due respect, kind of was really kind of, he was sort of more of a sort of a thing where he wanted to get in the limelight kind of guy, and it's like he wanted to own it, like make it, he
Yeah.
be in possession of something he could use, and that's but you were talking about Monterey. See, I don't think we played on Saturday. I think
Hmm.
we played on Friday.
Was it Friday?
We opened the show
Okay.
because we were going to play on Saturday,
Right.
but we had already signed. We were doing this dance with Matthew. That it was kind of this dance. Well, he was paying for rent for Don and Jerry. I didn't need it at that point, but he was paying the rent for a
Hmm.
couple of the band members. And when he would do that, if you'd sign away, you'd sign up as a manager. Then you'd threaten to stop doing it unless you signed your publishing away. And then in the end, right when we were starting to get national attention, you got to sign the rights to the name away from me, or
Hmm.
right when we were about to be able to make money and not have to do something like that. So we did it before we knew what we were worth, and we signed the rights to the name away. So by the time we got to Monterey, he was, we were doing our sound check, and they were going to film it for, being the
Hmm.
movie. And he was talking to Lou Adler, and he was saying, well,
Hmm.
you got on this trip, and he was telling Lou Adler, well, you can't film this band unless you give me $1 million. And of course, Lou Adler just said, okay, they're going to open the show, and so that's when we fired him.
Right.
And it's been like a 40-year. We finally got our name, publishing everything back in 2005, but we're old by then, or
Yeah.
old enough to have the window that
Right.
we closed, and been closed for a long time. So
Yeah.
that is the story. I don't, like I
Yeah.
say, I think when I think about this documentary that they put out, I know, I hope they don't say it's not. I don't see it as a tragic story, though. See, because my thing was always about just being able to play with these great musicians,
Hmm.
and not have to get a day job. And although that didn't really work out, it's like, I don't regret it, because, like I say, art sort of, when you're not writing from a lofty perch, I think the music has some kind of, it has more. People can, they can relate to you easier than they can if you're just on a different level than them. Like
Right.
if you're talking about, they feel like you're talking about their lives when you're writing a song about your own. I think in the end, that leaves a body of work that tells more of an interesting story.
Sure.
So what
Yeah.
can I say about all this? In life, you gotta make something good out of what you get, and if it isn't
Sure.
exactly what you want, okay, maybe that makes you more creative.
Yeah, I don't think Moby Grape was a tragic story at all, man. You guys put out some great albums, some great music, you know,
Yeah, well,
very talented band, you know.
but I hear that. I hear that some
I don't know
people like,
why. I
well,
don't think of
look at
yeah,
Wikipedia. I say, like, these poor guys,
yeah,
they really, I don't know. It's just been, it's like once people think of you that way, I mean,
right.
they just don't want to have anything
Yeah.
to do with it. That's really not my perception of
No,
what
a
happens.
tragic band is
Yeah,
Badfinger. Two guys committed
yeah,
suicide, you know?
yeah, something like that, or even Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of
So
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, that can, but of course that's there.
right.
Like that. That is definitely taken in drugs. Maybe not in even intentional
Hmm.
suicide, but somebody that just thinks they can, like take drugs and stop all that internal dialogue, that you
Hmm.
get
Right.
when more people know you than you're
Yeah,
going to have to deal with that. You're
sure.
going to
Sure.
hear voices or whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's that's in everybody, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think with famous people, sometimes it gets to a point where, and I saw my mom's peers do it.
Yep.
Marilyn Monroe, who I
Oh
knew,
yeah.
and it was of course I was a kid, but there's something about it. I just thought, why would they should be happier than
I
anyone
know.
else because they
I know.
got everything they ever wanted, and
Yeah.
yet somehow that does not make people happy
I know.
because they the truth is the universe does not stay the same. It
Right.
constantly keeps changing. When you get stuck with this preconception of yourself in somebody else's mind,
Yeah.
and you're trying to keep that from changing because you want to stay in the limelight,
Yeah.
all kinds of weird stuff it happens to you, your genetic that drive toward
Hmm.
uniqueness that we all inherited from the little arthropods that grew an extra foot and swimmed away from the predator when the other ones got ate. You know.
Well, one last thing I want to say about the album. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
Um,
thanks, man.
Saying Goodbye was a favorite. You know what that song reminded me of? It sounded a little bit like Bob Welch and Hypnotize, and it sounded a little bit like Steely Dan in a way, which was
Yeah.
cool, you know?
Well, it's like that came from my wife's father was dying in a
Uh-huh.
in a room up there. He was a very demonstrative kind of loved athletics, like sport, an athletic guy.
Right.
He sort of through the slings and arrows of he had sort of circulation problems, the heart stuff,
Hmm.
and all of it. And then he, got to where he couldn't, they couldn't take care of him. So they put him in this place. And it was like thinking about him while she was up there with him when he was passing away. And I was down here thinking about it. And the idea came to me like, with like you're in this room and yeah, outside the where the morning breeze is, it
Hmm.
comes and goes as it pleases. It was kind of a jazz. He was like, and actually, her parents, he owned a record store, and when Moby Grape did our press release party at the Avalon, he and his wife, my mother-in-law, were there, and for that, so that, and then how I
Oh.
met my wife, were years later, and sort of it was a kind of fate,
Hmm.
or something. And I just felt like somehow I felt like I was, I could almost, I got the sense that, I could, through his, get in there and see it from his point of view. Somehow
Right.
that I get that sometimes, like it's not a sort of a, not a clairvoyance, but, like when you get to take a look at it, from someone else's point of view.
Hmm.
And
Sure.
it's, I don't know how that works. It's like we're all connected anyway in
We are.
somehow, but I just think that, that's where that song came from. And the jazz part, it sounds like to me, like I wanted the mood of it to be like,
Hmm.
because her dad really loved Carmel and going to the Big Sur to have the place Rocky Point to have dinner with his family, and like that Play Misty for Me, the movie,
Hmm.
the Clint Eastwood movie, now,
Yeah.
and I always love driving up Highway 1, because the way that mood is in that coast when you get the fog and the things, that to me is like the California at its best. And
Right.
anyway, so I wanted to sort of sound jazzy, like because that's what that kind of music to me is what you would, yeah, what the background music for that area is it sounds like, that where it's like you get these
Oh,
like polychords where they get a little bit of dissonance here, but it resolves, but you get this. I want it to sound like the fog coming in from the coast as you're driving up and have to take it easy. And then, these, and they create an image, of that kind. And so it's that sort of, but a lot of my music, yeah, it's just driven by wanting to create a certain mood, I
sure.
guess.
Sure.
Yeah,
I wish you'd play more of that kind of sound, that kind of jazzy feeling. I loved it, man. You're
yeah.
really good at it, you know?
Well, I mean, I sort of got into that. I was a
Yeah.
folk rock nut.
Right.
Really, when I first I was a musician in high school, like I say, but then in college,
Yep.
my mother sent me to Purdue because I
Hmm.
didn't think me having a job playing blues in a bar in Santa Monica was a proper way to live my life. So yeah, I agreed to go. Okay, I got into this professional pilots program at
Right.
Purdue, and I went back there. And then back when I was back there, I became aware of Bob Dylan, and I
Hmm.
started to have my doubts about spending my life on a tarmac smelling jet fumes. And so, by the time I got home after that, instead of I was walking up and down the strip, and I heard this music coming out of a club, and it was a song I'd heard that I liked. Do You Believe in Magic? And I
Hmm.
looked up and saw the Lovin' Spoonful on the marquee, and went in, and it was not just one that they played all these songs. They were just as good and better, and the band was just great. And I just thought, well, I didn't go to my interview at TWA the next day. I just went and bought Gil Thunderbird because that's what Zal Yanowski was playing, and I got a Rickenbacker 12 string, and I
Hmm.
just went in my room and started playing music. And my mom came in a couple of weeks later. My hair started growing. She said, "You got to cut your hair, get out of here." She was fed up because she'd spent a lot of money to send me to school and everything. And I stepped in my car, as I wandered around on the Sunset Strip, and asked everybody with long hair if they played music.
Right.
I was starting a band. I finally got a band, Peter and the Wolves. I got a job. We played at Gazzari's with the guys. It was Pat and Lolly Vegas, who were the other
Hmm.
band, and they finally became Redbone that
Yeah.
did Come and Get Your Love. So that's the story of that. And then getting in Moby Grape, was like a sort of being at the right place at the right time. And, like really did never look back.
Hmm.
I did never. I do. My wife and I go sit at the airport over here. Why? Because I have a nostalgia for it.
Hmm.
But it's like I never. The idea of being able to follow my heart instead of my head,
Yeah.
is always. I will never. I think that's the advice I would give my daughter or anybody else. I don't. I don't. I know there's all kinds of reasons why. You should go get yourself. Make sure you're going to be able to pay the bills and all the
Hmm.
rest of it. But I don't think that's the future is kind of like you have to create it.
Hmm.
You it just I think the true survival depends on being you depending it really, and you have to do it in faith sometimes. You
Right.
just have to make certain choices.
Sure.
And I would say when you get to that point, I think it's better to follow your heart and really be intense and whatever you have to
Mhm.
do. You have to remain totally. If you can just focus and summon up enough intensity, I think that there will be a point at which you can say to yourself when you look back when you're
Hmm.
at the end of your life, that you hadn't wasted your time here.
Yeah.
Rather than do something that you don't like to
Right.
make sure you can, and then look back and wonder if it's just all been a waste of time. And
I'm doing that. I'm doing that now, man.
yeah,
I'm interviewing all my rock and roll legends. I've done close to 1,000 interviews. I've
yeah,
written several books.
yeah.
Not making a lot of money or anything, but I don't care. I'm doing what I love. you know?
Well, I think if you want to, the whole thing about me talking about the life being like a relay race and not
Right.
just a race, it's like you do pass the memory of you
Hmm.
is going to be of a guy that did what you just
Yeah,
described. So I think that is the only way. That's the when you do that, somehow that becomes your legacy
exactly.
instead of somebody that was unhappy but he could pay the bills. And so
Exactly.
I don't know what to say. Like the
You
people
know,
that do go get a job and work every day. I say, God bless you.
right.
You know, but there is that the '60s was about. It was not about that.
Hmm.
And I made a choice to become part of the '60s,
Yeah.
and I'm just not gonna just say, okay, I messed up, and I have to, because I don't want to leave that as a memory of who
I
I am.
agree. I
Yeah,
agree, man.
right.
I want to talk about your Hollywood connection. I just want to make sure everybody knows that your mom was Loretta Young, first of all.
Right. Okay.
And
Okay. Yeah.
you know what I noticed with all these interviews that I've done? You guys are all connected. Musicians are connected to Hollywood. Hollywood is connected to musicians.
Yeah.
So many people are
Yeah.
connected with.
Yeah.
Um, you also mentioned that you try to you were they were trying to shield you, I guess, from that Hollywood in the family. And
Yeah.
I talked to Janet Robbins. She's a friend of mine. Marty Robbins is her father, and they shielded her. I talked to Lucy Arnaz, and same thing. She never
Yeah.
saw her mom and dad,
Right.
growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But you guys are all connected. It's so strange, in some way. You guys are
Yeah.
connected.
Well, when you're living in the shadow of somebody's, when you're living in somebody's shadow,
Hmm.
it's very hard what we're all, I think what we're all trying to do is just figure out who we are.
Right.
And there's the drive to be unique that's in everybody. When you're sort of typecast as being a celebrity kid, I mean,
Hmm.
how are you supposed to respond to that? I mean, you have to be very polite at the dinner parties and put on the everything's all right show 24/7.
Right.
And if you can't do that, you can get sent to a boarding school or whatever they
Yeah.
did. And one example is Michael Reagan, who I went to military school with,
Hmm.
and because everybody that was from that, or not everybody, but a lot of movie stars, kid John Farrow, which is Mia Farrow's brother,
Hmm.
we all went to this military school
Right.
where it's just horrible. It was like abusive, and they were we started out being a day student, and if you misbehave, you get to board there. When you board there, man, it's like, and Michael had to board there, and we take Michael. He was in my grade, so we take Michael up to Ojai. We had a house in Ojai for the weekend
Hmm.
sometimes, and he would always be in his military school uniform. And his parents were rich, and I mean, I loved Jane and Ronald Reagan, and all.
Hmm.
But they weren't married anymore at the time. But Jane Wyman in particular, she
Right.
would come up there and we'd spend this weekend at our house in Ojai with my parents. And I remember looking for Michael one day, and I couldn't find him. And I finally wandered into my mom's room, and his mom, Jane Wyman, was lying down on the bed taking a nap. And Michael in his military school uniform was all, and he was already, I don't know, in the fifth grade, curled up next to you, kind of in the fetal position, his
Hmm.
military school uniform with his shoes on, trying to take a nap, and it got me, I just thought, this is, this poor guy, man. And then in the summer, he wouldn't come home for the summer. He'd go to a kind of military camp.
That sucks.
Yeah. Really, I mean, but everybody would think, well, you're Ronald Reagan's son. You must had it great. And
Yeah.
everybody have their perception of you is not the reality of the life you're really living.
True. True.
Now, I got my own story about that, at some
Yeah.
point, but I was just saying, unless you, I mean, I guess some of these kids, can hang in, or Candy Bergen, was my first girlfriend, and so Candy, she didn't, she somehow that never was an issue to her. She was able to stay there, and just sort of, like waltz into a career in movies and
Mm-hmm.
TV. And she was, and at some point she was Terry Melcher's girlfriend.
Oh, Terry
Terry,
Melcher.
was we're trying
We
to
know
get
all about him.
yeah, well, no, he was great, man. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a great producer.
Yeah.
Don't you like him or something?
Well, didn't he kind of rip off Grand Funk?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Did he?
Wasn't he their manager too at one time? Terry
Oh man.
Melcher? I thought
I,
so.
I don't
Yeah.
think so, dude. Really?
I thought so. Yeah.
He might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't in business with Terry,
Right.
but he's another movie star's kid.
Right. Right.
And
Doris Day, right? Doris Day?
yeah, Doris
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just so. All right, well, okay, we'll just leave that right there. Yeah, but
That's cool.
no, but like, there's all kinds of ways to.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I never heard anything about it. I
Yeah.
thought he was the only thing I remember is like Candy was, and then having a party at his house with her, and Charles Manson was there,
Right.
and it was sort of the week before Terry moved out, and then and that scene happened with
Mm-hmm.
these other people. It's a very strange deal. And then later, I was doing some studio work with Terry,
Mm-hmm.
and I had this guy, this friend of mine. I brought him up to Terry's house, and Terry came out. You saw me in my truck out there with this guy. He came out and he said, "Hey, man, come here." And I got out of the truck and I said, "Don't ever, ever bring anybody here without telling me
Right.
first,
Right.
okay?" And it was after the whole Manson
Yeah.
trip, and then then somehow Terry got in a motorcycle wreck, and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't finish the project we were working on. I didn't see him, and then he passed away, of course, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but
I
that's
had
that.
uh I had Matthew Nelson on the show, and I know Christian was a good
Yeah,
friend of yours,
right.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Did you know
Chris is.
Ricky as well?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Chris is my first girlfriend, man.
Yeah, that's cool. I liked
Yeah,
her.
that's like, and
Yeah.
she was great, and she just we broke up. She knew I liked Ricky Nelson. She said, "It's the last thing I do. I'm gonna marry Rick Nelson."
Hmm.
And it was kind of like we had just broke up. I don't know. Like, maybe it was because I sort of wanted more, get in bed with somebody, and she wouldn't do that yet. Too young, you know. But we were all kind of in those days. That's what was. You don't want to grow up real fast, and
Yeah.
Chris was still. I think she, was at a. She was always a painter.
Mm-hmm.
She would. She had that. They lived out West Hollywood, no, West LA, I guess, in a nice place they had. And I go over there, and go down. They take me, go down their basement, and set up my guitar and play for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically, like, I met her at my 15th birthday party, and we got to like each other, and then somehow I lost track of her. But then at that
Hmm.
party, that I was in this book called Musicians as Artists, because after Moby Grape, I went back to school, got a degree in studio art and
Mm-hmm.
painting and drawing, and they were putting out this book, and I went to this party down there at the BB King's in Universal City, and she was there with her kids, Matthew and Gunnar,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I went over to him saying, hey, I knew your parents, because I met Rick when I
Mm-hmm.
was 13, I went to Hawaii after I came back from New York to live with my mom, go to high school out there, and she took me to Hawaii, and we were at the Royal Hawaiian, and 2 days later, Ozzy and Harriet check in with
Mm-hmm.
David and Ricky, and I'd already fallen in love with this guy. I wanted to be Rick Nelson, and I got that in the end, I got to sit between Ozzy and Harriet and watch him play in front
Oh
of
wow.
30,000 screaming chicks,
How cool is
So,
that?
and then, and man, I tell you, that was the best live concert I've ever seen,
Yeah.
ever since. I mean, that band he had was, they were, I mean, they did 4-piece band, and they had, I don't know, the Jordanaires or whoever they were that sang
Hmm.
backup, and that was it.
Yeah.
And Rick got out there, and then it sounded just exactly like, of course, James Burton. I got to ride back in the car with James Burton,
Yeah.
and I said, "Hey man, will you teach me how to play guitar?" He said, "Hey man, if you ever see me around, just you can watch what I do, but don't ask me to play it twice. You have to learn by watching people,
Right.
not having them show you where to put your fingers. You have to figure that out yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, it's a sort of, I always remember that. But then the next day, I got to go meet Ricky, and we went up to his hotel room and I met him, and he's very nice to me,
Hmm.
and I never forgot it. And then years later, after Moby Grape, I saw him. I went to see him at the Palomino. His roadie saw me back there wandering around the club and asked me to. He said, "Well, Rick, do you here?" And I said, "I don't think so." So he said, "Well, come on, man, be back there." And he came out of the dressing room, and we talked for a while. After that's when I saw Chris at this party, and
Hmm.
then we became friends after that.
Hmm.
When I asked Gunnar and Matthew, I said, I knew your parents, and they pointed us. It was right over there, and there was Chris talking to somebody, and of course we were older at that point. She'd already been married and divorced to Grant Tinker after
Hmm.
this is way after Rick died, but she had a house in New Mexico, and I started going down to. We started, my wife and I were going down to visit her, and we had bought some property down there, and then
Hmm.
got kind of tight with her, and it was a wonderful that kind of thing. She was the last person from my world that
Hmm.
I had any real relationship with.
Yeah.
But we shared a lot. That was part of what was going on with us, and did this, and she passed away, and I went down there to sing that song,
Hmm.
let saying goodbye at
Hmm.
her memorial service
Hmm.
in Santa Fe. But and Sam Nelson, who is her youngest son, I kind
Hmm.
of he came to see me play. I knew him better than I knew Matthew and Gunnar and Tracy. I knew her.
Hmm.
So, but that's the story of the her,
Yeah.
and but I still miss her. Yeah, I miss her. I mean,
Yeah.
you miss that.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
people that know you have gone. There's this thing that happens where you're, who am I? Who are you
Yeah.
anyway?
Yeah.
You're who people think you are. Now this person that knew you and liked you, they're gone.
Yeah, the
And
Nelsons, they all died kind of young too. Ozzy died young. You know,
yeah,
and it's a shame. They're a
I
great
guess so.
family.
I guess so it is, but it's like, yeah, I don't know if you can look at it exactly like that. I mean, you have to sort of
Yeah.
try to carry on and take that and do something redeeming with it.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and creativity is the key, and I think that if because it's going to happen to everybody. That's what I'm saying. This album's about. Ain't no way
Yeah.
we're all going to live forever here.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
I don't want to go through the rest of my life and sweating it and and getting like getting freaked out by the doctors or anything else.
Yeah. And
Because I
we see more doctors as we get older, don't we?
well, you do, and some of them are not very cool.
Yeah.
They just try to like, oh, I don't know, if you do, we can try this. They don't. None of them. I don't know. The whole thing now has become like very clinical, where it's like taking a car to the guy to fix the car, and if they,
Same thing.
well,
Same thing.
try to fix it, but I
Yeah.
don't know, but you
Same
gotta
thing,
pay.
man.
You gotta pay them anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't fix your.
I just got over COVID. I had all the shots, all the boosters, and I still got it.
Yeah, well,
You know?
I got it too.
Really?
But we oh yeah, but it was kind of like
Yeah.
a cold or something, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know what it was like for you.
It hit me a little harder than that. It took a while to get rid of it too.
Yeah, a couple of
You know?
weeks, right?
Yeah, a couple weeks, several
Okay,
weeks, three
okay,
weeks.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, you know what I'm saying. But during that whole thing, it's like, oh, the sky's falling,
Right.
and I just don't know if that's about selling the vaccines or somebody's getting paid for something.
Oh
But
no.
I just have my doubts about the whole thing. I think our job here is to help each other save our souls, whatever that
Yeah,
means.
that's
And
true.
I think, but I mean, the only real redeeming, uh, that would be the only worthy goal. I mean, if you're
Hmm.
just talking about some kind of economic feeding frenzy, I
Right.
don't think that redeems us. You can get your mega yacht, get out
Yeah.
there and be free of all this stuff, and you're still going to die.
Right.
Okay, well, I mean,
Can't
I
take it
mean,
with you, man.
well, no, you can't, and I just don't know what to say to. But I don't. I say when people get to that point, they're still human beings, and
Yeah.
I still wish them well. But I think it's way harder when you're like that at some point,
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's if that is that there's some kind of cosmic justice in that, or
Yeah.
what. I don't really. It's just the way we made it.
Right.
It's just the way we decided to do this. I mean, maybe we're just trying to, kind of create silicon-based life forms because
Mm.
we're making ourselves extinct, so that the whole thing will go on after none of us are here. And
Well,
that's what this is for. And if that's it, good. Let's
we're,
do that.
we're all going to be artificial intelligence anyway in the future, right?
Well, I think so. And I mean, it's like if we knew we were doing it, we wouldn't do it. But I don't think you have to know anything like that. You just have to try to try to stay in there and not
Yeah.
get too like, oh man. And see, the only thing I would say about the '60s that I don't dig is the memory is the when I suspect that when it turned like, when it's not like that better day of coming, and we're going to do it the right way. We're going to like peace, not war. When it was kind of like, okay, let's have it. And I don't like associating Moby Grape with that image that we had on the first record cover with the American flag and flipping out the world. Like, okay,
Right.
we're sick of waiting around for this. We're gonna just take it, make
Hmm.
it the way we want it, because that ain't no different than Hitler, really. Or I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, but like I say, you deal with what people see. When you show them that, they got a perfect right to think that's where you're at. And
Yeah.
if you can't keep that in perspective, see, I think
You'd have to.
who
Yeah.
did the best at that was the Rolling Stones,
Yeah. You're
because
right.
they're really not devil worshippers or anything. I mean,
Right.
but they can throw that out there and let you think that, and then just get up there and say, "Hey, man, it's only rock and roll."
Exactly.
And
And they
so
didn't get political either. They never
no,
got political.
never
Yeah.
did. And so
You're
so I
right.
think I think that is a good example.
It is.
You know,
Yeah. I agree with
yeah,
you 100%, man.
right on.
I just
Yeah,
want to mention some of the great Moby Grape hits. Omaha, which is a biggie. Mr. Blues, Hey Grandma. I loved. That was a great
yeah.
tune.
Oh
Come in the
yeah.
Morning, Never. It's a Beautiful Day. You guys wrote some great music back in the day. Um, I want to mention Bill Graham. What was your association with Bill?
I think Bill was like the savior up
Hmm.
there. He was a real champion for the music, and he got a lot of people off, like Carlos Santana in
Hmm.
particular is what and he helped the airplane get out of their contract with he helped us too, and with that, in the end, his there's this thing about being an artist manager where you can't be also an agent. And
Hmm.
in the conference of personal managers, there's one of the bylaws, and Matthew, was booking the airplane at the Fillmore, and Bill Graham, sort of testified in court that he had done that, and so that is what got them out of their their management thing, and I don't know about the publishing, but that happened later. But that's what got them free of Matthew Cates, so that because
Hmm.
Matthew would, the story was that Matthew would not give them an accounting, and Marty Ballin got angry at that, and Bill Graham, they were friendly with Bill because they were playing at the Fillmore all the time, and so Bill just, sort of became their champion and got him out of that deal with Matthew, and so they just basically they escaped.
Hmm.
It's like when right before they did Surrealistic Pillow, which is what made him famous, and but like I heard Herbie Herbert was the guy who managed Journey and Santana, who finally was our champion, and he got us paid for the legal, our defense, where we went after. Took Matthew to court, got our name and publishing back, basically because he had booked us at the Fillmore too, and Bill Graham also wrote a note about that.
Hmm.
And but that all happened. It was all so convoluted that it went on for 40 years.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that. But I heard Herbie Herbert say, "Well, man, this guy, and he was a manager, and he was not the kind of manager that wanted to get in the spotlight. He had been Santana's roadie,
Right.
so they basically took people." And also with that Bruce Cohen had been the Doobies roadie.
Hmm.
They had the clout to have whoever they want answer the phone, and so that's the way to do it if you can. But I think that my advice to it, but I guess Herbie said, about Matthew. Said, well, he had the Jefferson Airplane, Moby Grape, and A Beautiful Day. He could
Hmm.
have hung his hat on that. Instead, he was in
Right.
court with all three bands, or and so that's not cool, and
Yeah.
that's not a good example anyway. And I think that you know, in Herbie's case, he's sort of that is how you should you should do it. Like these guys are there they need somebody to speak for them, and not try to you know drive the boat all the time. They said, guide them through this maze, because this music business is like full of traps,
Mm.
and like things where people are just trying to get on the bandwagon, so to speak. But
Yeah.
you know,
True.
but that would be my only advice to everybody that's out there now.
Hmm.
It's wait till you get them lined up at the door before you sign anything. You
I think
gotta.
I think Bill Graham was an amazing guy, man. I
Well,
really
he
do.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd say, and he died young too, and
Yeah.
unpredictably, and so forth. But I don't know if that's and Rick Nelson died in a plane crash, same deal.
Yeah.
But what is that? I mean, I don't know what that is. It's like they, so that you don't forget who they didn't change into something else. They didn't have time to become
Hmm.
corrupt or whatever it was, and so but that's what I'm saying. It's got to be more about the memory people leave behind than it is
Yeah.
exactly when they die.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
That's
no,
that's true.
yeah,
I look on the on YouTube all the time for spoken dialogue by Bill Graham, and I found a lot, and I'm
yeah,
amazed just listening to the guy. He's
yeah.
very intelligent, very intelligent
Well,
guy.
well, he was, and I just,
Yeah.
he's very kind of rough edge, like you
Right.
go there to play, and the first thing you do is before the gigs, and the Fillmore was, they didn't have any seats, and there was like a
Hmm.
wooden floor, and you get to play touch football with him and his sound crew, the crew, Moby Grape against Bill and those other guys, and
Yeah.
they hit you hard, like
Yeah.
get you up there, and like, you know. So it was, but it's not afraid of the physical contact. He's not the kind of guy you want to fool around with.
No, not at
I
all.
remember him. We went my first memory of Bill Graham was going up the steps to the Fillmore. You had to kind of walk up there, and Matthew, he was going to take us there, and like we were actually, I was in this band with Bob Mosley and Joe Scott Hill, who was a guy
Hmm.
that had a trio, and Johnny Barbada, Bob Mosley, and Joel Scott. I was going to have a band with Joel, and Joel and I wanted to start a band that wrote original material, didn't do cover tunes, and we needed a bass player. So we got Bob, who had played with Joel until Lee Michaels joined the Joel Scott Hill
Hmm.
trio, and Bob quit because he didn't want to share the money. So we got Bob after the Joel Scott Hill trio broke up, and Bob and Joel and I were going to have a band, and we had a drummer that had that I used to play with, and he went to play with Joel after Joel, because in those days everybody was changing bands every five
Right.
minutes. So, and anyway, we were going to have this band, and this drummer had already met Matthew Cates, who was looking for another drummer after Skip left the Airplane. He finally
Hmm.
got Spencer Dryden, and who had also played in my band. And and anyway, we were practicing, and all of a sudden, I looked, and this guy with a black goatee and his hair all combed back in a black turtleneck, kind of looked like a beatnik kind of guy, and twisting his goatee, kind of looking at it from this corner of a room. And I said, I didn't pay much attention to him. And the next day, I got a call from the drummer, and he said, that was this guy that was the manager of the Jefferson. Wants to talk to us. He's interested in our band. So we went over to talk to Matthew, and he had an apartment on the Strip at Hollywood, the Sunset Strip, in a nice apartment. We went up to see him, and he convinced us that he asked us if we wanted to go put our band together in San Francisco. It
Hmm.
was really trying to find a band for Skip, because Skip had sort of stayed with him after the
Hmm.
airplane, after he left the airplane. So Matthew was trying to get a band to play with Skip, get Skip in another band,
Hmm.
and and that's how we got to San Francisco. But Joel didn't go, but me and Bob did, and then we got Don and Jerry in a couple of weeks later, because we didn't like Skip didn't like the drummer, so he said, we got to get somebody else to play drums. So finally, we got Bob knew Don and Jerry, because they were in a band, the Frantics, for a while after he left Joel. You know how this works, and then Jerry and came with Don, and then we just jammed that one night at Matthew's basement office, and we just did was like just like I don't know, some kind of like you know like like what a critical mass experience, where
Hmm.
you create this thing that certainly goes in the middle and then comes out, boom, and it's all, and stay in control of it all, and it was this weird thing, just the right chemistry.
Hmm.
And so that's how it unfolded, as far as the history of the beginning of our band. But the songs just kind of just came,
Hmm.
when we were doing this, trying to play together, and they just showed up, and it was weird. So it
You
was
still
very.
talk to Bob, Jerry, or Don?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all the time. I
Yep.
talked to Bob. Like I'll call him once in a while. He went through. I mean, his life. If you want to, I don't want to call it tragic, but he had
Hmm.
suffered. He suffered in his life, and so did Skip,
Yeah.
quite a bit. And
Yeah.
I just say, being as talented as Bob Mosley was, I mean, I've never met a guy that could do what Bob Mosley did on a stage, which is
Hmm.
get out there. And he didn't need a microphone or anything. I mean, his voice was so powerful. He'd just get out there and just start playing. I mean, the first time I heard him, I picked Bob up at the airport when I first met him, and he was coming down from wherever he was, playing a solo gig someplace, and he had his bass leaning up against the bar at the airport. Had his hair all razor cut, combed
Hmm.
backwards, had a goatee, looked real mean. And it's like by then I had long hair and the bell bottoms,
Yeah.
and I just walked out. I said, "Are you Bob Mosley?" And he didn't answer me. He just picked up his bass and followed me to my car. So we got in the back seat, made me chauffeur him into and we got halfway there at a stoplight, and he said, "Well, I want to paraphrase it again." But he said, "I can sing anything like a mofo, and play and sing up to high C." And he said, "What can you
Yep.
do?" Asking, that was the first words Mosley said to me. Then we
Hmm.
got to where we were going and met Joel and the drummer. We heard him play for the first time, and
Hmm.
it's like, and he was saying Big Boss Man, and he thought it was my band. So he's looking at me and singing, "Big boss man, you just tall, that's all." And they boom, 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 the way he played and sang, it's just oh man, it's like I don't know if I can work with this guy, but somehow it's just like we got connected there,
Yeah,
and ended up in Moby Grape, and it
that's
was
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Peter, here's your final question. Okay.
All right.
It's an interesting question. I ask everybody the same question. I get some very interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform with, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
I would say it would be this guy Jonathan McEwen that I met over here at
Mm,
Lost Chord, and
really?
yeah, well, Jonathan is the son of John McEwen, who started the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Yep.
Jonathan produced. He's a when I first saw him, he's in. I don't know how to. He's the best guitar player. When I say best guitar player, it's hard to say that, but the
Mm-hmm.
way he can play, it's like the way he learned how to play. His dad taught him. His history, I guess, he started with bluegrass, and then dad was would make him sit in a room and learn a lick until he got fed, and do it a certain way. And
Right.
he just has, and he can sing, like he has one of those voices. He can yodel. I mean, he can sing it, cover any
Hmm.
song you want, and it's just better than the. He does rhinestone. He did rhinestone cover. He can play the piano and do that and sing it. Play it.
Yeah.
As a very charming cat. He's a little bit quixotic, I would say. With his behavior and everything, but he's just, I don't know why, but it just he's this amazing musician, and I saw him last night. He was over there. We talked a little, and I'd love to work with him. And I don't know if that's going to ever happen, but but he's when you ask that question, I don't know if you expect the answer to come out like somebody that's famous already that you
Not
like.
really. No.
No, well, that's not. See, I was thinking somebody else asked me that question. I think I might have
Mm-hmm.
said something like Jackson Brown, because
Right.
I like Jackson, but and I know him, but I mean, he doesn't need anybody to collaborate with.
Yeah.
And I just say that Jonathan, and he's just great songwriter, although doesn't think of himself as one. But I don't know. I have that. I always, I have this sort of a band with my daughter and this guy from L.A.
Mm-hmm.
That plays with Alice in Chains sometimes, or like
Mm-hmm.
the remnants of those guys when they go play. But he's a
Right.
great songwriter, young guy from Chicago, and a great guitar player and singer. So we've written these songs together and have this kind of band we play with. And I just thought, because I'm 78, the guy I would like to get, if there's anybody to replace me in this band, would be Jonathan McEwen, because I just
Huh.
see, like to create some kind of a, you can't not listen to them. I mean, they
Right.
got it all. And there's so much music now that people make that nobody even they don't think they got to listen to it, or they oh yeah, and but I wanted to, my idea would be to create a band where you got to listen to this, man, because it's
Sure.
like, when these guys really, they're out there and they really mean it. Like I heard
Mm-hmm.
the produced Bob Dylan's producer once, when you saw this guy, it's like seeing somebody that really it really, has something to say, and whether right away it blows you off,
Mm-hmm.
it blows your way. You got to listen to this guy and let him say it, and then by the time he gets through saying it, he's got you,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just like that. I kind of like, rather than something that a lot of music now is made, because it's like they sort of play it safe, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of warbling.
Yeah.
The people that can sing really good, but there's not really much being said there.
Mm-hmm.
As a demonstration of somebody's musical prowess. But the idea of getting some, it's like the Dylan thing, where somehow they found something to say about something that you got to listen to, because it's really about, it's like about all of us.
Hmm.
And I really that's as far as my my goal, that would be it, in the end. But I'm 78, and I can stay here and write my little songs here, and I do that, and I love it. uh but as far as performing, getting out there and really like it, I think people need to see that that these people have a future, not just the past.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
think so, man. There's a point at which you gotta say, okay, well, and I
Sure.
hear Grace Slick say it too. Like, there's a
Yeah.
point at which they, just it's just too weird. It's like you're
Yeah.
trying to hang on too long or something. I mean, why isn't that okay? You
I
know?
I saw you on YouTube, I think, performing. I don't think it was your daughter. It was somebody else, wasn't it? You were doing it like an acoustic thing with somebody.
Yeah.
Was that your daughter, or was that somebody else?
I think it might have been her. It must have
Okay.
been. Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, it
So
must have been her.
are you guys playing locally together,
Yeah,
or
yeah, we do. We play locally, like I say, but pretty much with this band we have that
right?
sounds really good. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, I'm 78, you know. You see, and
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, how long can I really?
Well, look at the
It takes
Stones.
takes a lot of look, man. It takes, whatever everybody thinks. It takes tons of energy
I know. I
to
know.
deliver that
You're
kind of
right.
performance that keeps you right in the zone where you're
Yeah.
listening and talking to your bandmates at the same time.
You're right.
Nobody's falling behind,
Yeah.
because the music happens in space and time, man. It's like a energy curve, like a surfer. You got to stay in front of the
Right.
curve, and and keep, staying. Mean at the same time, staying in the moment,
Yeah.
not get too far ahead of yourself, and not get
Right.
caught by the wave. And that's what it feels like when you're really, you're out there and you can't do any wrong.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But what that requires a certain amount of what I call intent, not
Right.
intention. Best of intentions mean nothing, but a force that Carlos gets here, which I read a lot of, calls intent.
Hmm.
Intent is a force that
Right.
is in the universe that you can, that it's always there. And we have to learn to make connect ourselves with, and then control with our will. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like, and the will is like, the will and intent are kind of interconnected, or
Hmm.
that the thing that we intend, we're gonna do this, man.
Right. Sure.
We're not gonna try to do this, we're gonna
We're
do
gonna
it.
do it. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not just
yeah,
gonna talk about it. I'm gonna do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah,
But
that's it.
Peter, you look great, man. You don't look your age at all. You're
Yeah,
sharp as
well,
a tack. You
yeah.
know. I mean,
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, that's better than saying, "Oh man, sorry about that."
you look great,
Yeah.
man. You know, you remind me a little bit. Mark
Ah.
Andes. Mark Andes.
Oh
You know,
yeah, the guy in the Spirit.
yeah, Spirit,
Yeah.
Firefall. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had him on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, he's very cool.
he's a
And
cool guy.
Randy
Yeah,
California was cool too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, man. But there's another guy because he died saving his kid. Did you know that story?
yeah. He drowned, didn't he?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's weird because Randy and I don't know, first time we played with Spirit, we were in Salt Lake City. I remember
Hmm.
Skippy and Randy really got along. They were
Right.
hugging each other. I love you, man. They really related to each other. But Randy and I kind of like, because I was on a weird trip. I don't know what it was, maybe not feeling as secure as those other band members were, the Moby Grape, I mean, my thing was, I don't know what to even, and in the end, I sort of would. In the beginning, I used to wonder what do they need me for, But I added something like an element to it, the finger picking thing, the three guitar trip,
Yeah.
and that was cool. And the vocal harmonies sometimes in my songs, but in the end, they were so strong. I mean, Skippy and Bob and Jerry and Don together could do it, you know. And I always felt like, a little bit, and I think Randy sensed that, and he kind of thought, But then later, we were in the '90s, I guess, we did some gigs, after all, every after the deluge, and as it were, and we were all going out and doing gigs like at the House of Blues, places
Hmm.
like that, and doing with playing with other bands from the '60s in the Spirit, Moby Grape. We
Right.
played a couple of gigs, and Randy kind of, it's kind of still guy, but Randy was like, he was great.
Mm-hmm.
He could. I remember hearing him get up there and he could play and sing. It didn't, I remember him doing that song all along the Watchtower,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just really, it was like Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
He could do that, and
Yeah.
in Spirit, you didn't get the sense, like you didn't get that right away,
Yeah.
and he got better. He's one of them guys that got really good, just being able to, that his music, it must have been on the right path because he got really good. And
Mm-hmm.
so at some point after a gig we did at the House of Blues, came up to me, he said, finally, he's like, oh, that was a good one. That's a good one, man. And then later, I was doing a gig at a place called the Highland Grounds with Sam Andrew, who we were trying to do a little act, and I was doing a song that I had on my first solo record called Fateful as Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy, all of a sudden, I heard this other guitar up there, and I turned around, and it was Randy jamming with us, And so that was a very cool thing because
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't one of them guys that chatted you up or anything. He was kind of like always thinking
Mm-hmm.
kind of guy, and it was kind of one of those things where it's just he's there and
Yeah.
you're playing with him,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. And I guess it was only a couple of months later that he died,
Yeah.
so we never did. That was it for us. But uh, yeah,
Spirit
but
was a great band.
yeah,
They're a
but the
really good
memory
band.
I have of him, it's like
Yeah.
having it change from one thing into the next.
Yeah. I
Very
saw Spirit.
smoothly.
I saw Spirit in a small club
Yeah.
in Baltimore. Yeah. They were excellent. Great band.
Well, they were, and
Yeah.
but every band, it's like they were with Columbia too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing with Columbia. There was like I don't want to say a rivalry, but like everybody wants to get all the attention. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that in the San Francisco. It was like you'd share the stage with the Dead or the Airplane, and nobody was like trying to blow anybody away,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I remember either Jerry Garcia was on an interview once. Somebody asked him, he asked the guy, he said, have you heard Moby Grape yet? And the interviewer said, no. He said, you like him? He said, oh, yeah. And so it was like they'd like you if you could play good.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It wasn't like, being envious or
Right.
anything like that. There was this weird, kind of, and it was not like it used to be, that in the 50s, that there was the same kind of battle of the bands type of
Mm-hmm.
vibe
Right.
going on. And, but all of a sudden there's this little window where the whole thing, and then of course you get signed and, how much attention do you get for your music
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the attention that and bands that were there before, like the Birds, who had been like the only real big hit rock band to the
Yeah.
Columbia, and we played with them, and they in San Francisco. One of the best nights we ever played was a gig we played with them at Winterland, and after the gig, David Crosby came to the dressing room and he just stuck his head in the door and said, "Wow." And so we named our second album "Wow."
That's cool.
Yeah, and then but then he said, "You want to meet the other guys in the band?" And of course, I did, because that was one of the reasons I didn't stay being a pilot, because I heard them
Yeah.
and I heard Dylan, and I just don't know, man. I can't. I'm not one of these. I'm one of those. I'm
Exactly.
going
I'm
back. Yeah. And so, to me, that was the defining moment,
yeah.
a very defining moment, because it kind of redeemed my choice not
Sure.
to, anyway. So we met the other guy, and Chris Hillman, who I know now, and he's very nice. And it didn't, but right then, Gene Clark had left, and they were trying to hang in there as a quartet. They still had a great sound.
Mm-hmm.
The Birds' sound was like nobody else. They could create kind of
Yep.
something going on over their heads, like 10 feet over their heads. It was so crystalline,
Mm-hmm.
the 12 string, and the way David could play, he played these weird altered chords, tuning guitars funny. And you didn't hear that. That was the only time you could hear that, if you want
Yeah.
to hear that. and then we went to meet McGuinn and Chris Hillman. They're kind of like, okay, you know, and uh, and so, but
Yeah,
and then
I had
and then
Roger and Chris on the show.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Chris is,
he's a good guy.
yeah, he's a great guy, and he's
Yeah.
just a real survivor too.
Yep.
Did you read his book?
No, not yet. I haven't
Oh,
read it
you
yet.
got it.
No.
Oh, his book is great, man. It's very well written,
Hmm.
and it's not all about who I met when. It's like about
Right.
his personal life, and it's he's a very it's a heroic kind of guy,
Yeah.
like, and it sounded like, and he didn't, like he's just telling the truth. You
Hmm.
can tell that, So I just, that was cool, man. I loved reading it,
Hmm.
and I've always, like I say, kind of when we got to go hear the Birds at Ciro's before, I even got back into music, and I remember standing in front of McGuinn and watching him play, with
Hmm.
the huge, because
Yeah.
he plays like a metronome,
Yeah.
like played a 12 string like he did, like because the 12 string, electric 12 string, the strings are real close together.
Hmm.
So the other thing where you can't bang on it like an acoustic 12 string,
Mm.
you can't do that, because electric guitar, everything you do to it makes a noise.
Yeah.
Noise. Some of them can be real ugly, But McGuinn was totally in control of it, like his hand. You can't hardly see him move,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
made this sound like it would sound like an orchestra.
Yeah.
And the inversions he would use, the way he could get around, with making it sound really smooth.
Yep.
It's like it's just fascinated by that, and that's kind of like that as far as an influence on me. You know, writing a song with my 12 string now, and that's like you have to keep going back to what I heard him doing, trying to copy it in a way. So
Hmm.
he was like one of them guys that sort of changed the course for guitar players, at least. There, everybody for a long time, maybe even until Hendrix showed up. I mean,
I
until that
know.
other kind of playing. It just focused on. There's so many bands that were trying to play like the Birds,
Yeah, it's
and
true.
nobody could do it. I mean, so I just, like I say, the Birds, a loving spoonful.
Yeah. I told Roger, I said, man, I don't know how you played 8 Miles High. He said, well, it was easy. It's not that hard.
Well, I think he's talking about like Miles Davis, or using,
Yeah.
that kind of scale, uh, that shape, the scale shape that he uses, where it's like it always ends up in a the last note is always like in a dissonant.
Hmm.
They're not, it's not in the same key.
Right.
But
Right.
your mind is always kind of having to, and then
Yeah.
he gets back. It's like an E minor, I think,
Right.
something. Yeah. So, but they're very ingenious, because what else is he going to do after he's, like, keep moving forward musically? You
Yep.
have to sort of explore these
Hmm.
there's the play, hearing 8 Miles House for the first time. The beginning, when I first heard it, I thought, what the hell is that? And then by the time the song ended, I was going, "Oh my God!"
Yeah. Great
So
song.
yeah,
Yeah.
But
Peter, is there
yeah, all right.
another album in the works? What's
Oh
going on
yeah,
there?
yeah. There's always another album in the
Okay.
works. So I got to, I was working on a song last night. Thinking
Good.
about this interview, sort of
Yep.
inspired me to keep going.
Awesome.
And it's like I just don't know what else to do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
When do you think you'll release that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just have to, I have to do it.
Yeah.
Like have to get the tunes that I like, a bunch of tunes, and then I'll figure out, maybe get Jonathan to
Hmm.
produce it. That's one way of getting involved with him.
Yeah.
He
Sure.
wanted me to produce an album for him, and then it's like kind of got, it's like, I, he's not really a songwriter, he said, but he wrote this song, and Dave Mason cut it. I heard this the other night, called "One Day." Have you ever heard
Hmm.
that song?
Yeah. I had
Well,
Dave on the show not long ago.
Dave's a
Yeah.
good friend of mine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that song "One Day,"
Hmm.
Jonathan wrote that.
Hmm.
So he says this is a songwriter. I heard it. I guess I heard it yesterday, and I just thought, man, that's the one of the best tunes I ever heard. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing, the way he plays that big intro,
Right.
This guy is an unbelievable guitar player. It's not Steve Vai, it's like
Right.
more like right in my zone, where you could, I don't think you could copy him ever. He's the
Huh.
sound, everything. It's a technique because he's just so, I don't know, man. It's like he's one of them guys that just knows how to touch the guitar.
You got to get him on the next album.
Yeah,
You know.
David. Yeah, well, he
Yeah.
plays on Frank Zappa's Ghost.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah, he's the guy
That's
that playing
him.
the.
That's
That's
him.
him playing, and
Oh,
he
wow.
did that, man. When I got him to do it, he was going to play in another scene, didn't make it on the record. I was just there when we had that on my daughter's machine, and he was in there. We were in there, and he heard it. And he just came over and he just picked the headphones up and he stuck it on my head. He came up and stuck it on my head, and then he went and turned on the machine. Grabbed my guitar and just nailed it in one take. Didn't know
Wow.
the chords or anything else. I know.
Wow.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That
Oh,
kind of
oh, I want to mention some of the people that are on that album. John's on bass. Of course, Jonathan McEwen,
yeah,
uh, Rob Daly, George Adrian, Alan
yeah,
Zahn, Jeff Elliott,
right,
Randy Tico,
right,
Brian Delaney, Tommy Allen, and Don McCauley.
yeah,
And I think, let's see, John also played on the Mellotron, Mark Muller on the pedal steel.
right.
So those are all the guys on your album.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Great
yeah.
album, man.
All right, man.
Peter,
Well,
thank you,
thank you.
man, for being on
All
the show
right,
today. I really,
yeah.
really appreciate it.
All right.
Love your music.
Oh man,
Um,
thank you. Yeah.
Looking forward to more stuff from you. I want to say very special thanks to Jim Merlis of Big Hassle Media for arranging this interview with Peter Lewis.
Okay.
Purchase the latest release by Peter Lewis, Imagination. I know you can get that on OMAD Records on their website. Is it also available on Amazon?
Oh, I think it is. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And if you
sure.
want more information about Peter Lewis, you can go to bighassle.com, and you're on Facebook as well.
God
God bless you, Peter. Thank you,
bless
man.
you, man.
You're
Hang in
awesome,
there.
dude.
All right, man.
I'm,
So are you.
I'm going to send you a copy of my book.
Oh, great, man. Good.
It's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of interviews and a lot of guys you know.
Oh,
Okay.
great, man. Yeah.
Guys
Okay.
like Johnny Winter, Emerson Lake and Palmer, lot of guys you'll know.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, that is what will be looking forward to next.
All
I
right,
really, I
man.
really will. Yeah.
You'll enjoy it.
Thank you, dude.
Take care, Peter.
Okay, man.
Bye bye.